Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the Islamic Puyu course by Ismail Suleiman from Burhaan. So, just a quick recap for last week. Last week we did partnerships, and we saw that partnerships were made up, well, there's two types of partnerships. Shirka is the Arabic word for partnership. So there's two types of partnerships. One is Shirkatul Aqd and the second is Shirkatul Milk, as we can see from the slide. Let me just make it a little bit bigger. So the first is Shirkatul Aqd and the second is Shirkatul Milk. So the meaning of this is Shirkatul Aqd is a joint enterprise where one or two partners gather together and they try and do some business together. The second type, Shirkatul Milk, this refers to joint ownership, where one or two people jointly own some property, either a big property, a building, or a smaller property, a pen or a pencil. They jointly own this property. We saw then last week, part of the recap. Okay, so we had partnerships is generally what we'll use to give finance or to offer finance to other. As Muslims, we don't get loans from banks where we charge interest. The general trend is we'll give loans without interest, or we'll get into a partnership where one person will be doing work and the other will be contributing capital. So Islam offers a solution to attaining finance, and one of those solutions is through a partnership. And two of the general partnerships that are used, as we saw, there was 5 different partnerships: Shirkatul Wujuh, Shirkatul A'mal, Shirkatul Aqd, and then Shirkatul Milk. There was 2 types, either it was optional or compulsory. We'll give some examples of that. But generally, when we are attaining finance, or the models done by Sahaba, the models done in society generally, are either musharaka or mudaraba. So musharaka, very quickly, just a recap from last week and then we'll transition into today's lesson. A partnership with 2 or more people contributing capital is called a musharaka. So if both parties, whether it's the same amount or it's varying amounts, for example, 2 people put 50,000 rand each, or one person puts 10,000 and the other puts 90,000, or 3 people come and they split it 50, 20, 70, it doesn't matter, they can all contribute. As long as they are contributing to the partnership, they will be a partner in that partnership. It doesn't have to be equal amounts. A mudaraba, however, is a partnership where one partner contributes capital and the other partner does all the work. So the partner that's contributing in this type of transaction would not do any of the work. It wouldn't be a correct condition to make it such that he also has to do any work. The one partner in this, or multiple partners, contribute capital. They are known as the Rabbul Mal, the contributors of capital, the owners of the money. And the Mudarib is the working partner, or multiple partners. So we'll come into that and a few rules regarding those things just now. Firstly, Shirkatul Milk. Shirkatul Milk is where 2 or more partners, 2 or more people jointly own a particular item or a particular property, and they are both have a right in that specific property. So with regards to this, there's 2 methods of it coming into being. One is optional, where 2 parties jointly agree to purchase, example, some equipment. So they each put down 50%, 50,000 rand each, and they buy the equipment worth 100,000 rand. When they make the purchase, each of them will own a 50% share in the asset. This means that if there are multiple items, it wouldn't be that half is owned by one person and half is owned by the other. If you had taken an example of an apple, it wouldn't be that you had 2 apples, one was for partner A and one was for partner B. What this means, when they are jointly owned by both parties, is that both apples, half of it is one partner's and half is the other. So in each apple, one partner owns half of it. This means that the ownership is with regards to, is with that partner. So if for some reason that the item is sold for a higher price than a second item, then each item would be distributed accordingly to the partner's shares, depending on how much they own. So this is optional, meaning you opt to do it, you get into it willingly. A compulsory, the other method of it coming into being is a compulsory type. This way you don't have an option. Generally happens when people pass away and the deceased estate, as soon as he passes away, immediately moves from his milkiyah, moves from his ownership into the ownership of the estate, the heirs of the estate. So whatever the proportional amount is, each item of the deceased estate will be owned now by the new owners according to his proportional share. So if a person is inheriting half the estate, then he'll own half of all the assets, not 50% of the total value, but 50% of every single asset. He or she can then exchange it with other partners after this, but at the time of maut, immediately all the heirs become owners in every single asset of the deceased. Secondly, we have shirkatul aqd, and this is generally when we're conducting business, these are the type of things that we can do. One is milkiyah, ownership. This is just telling us if you purchased it, what happened. And secondly, these are now the transactions that we can do with different people to make partnerships and attain finance in a permissible way. So the first one is shirkatul amwal. Shirkatul amwal, this means that partners invest some capital into the commercial enterprise. So as long as you're investing some capital, it will be considered shirkatul amwal. Secondly, there is shirkatul amal. This is generally done by professionals and people that they do some work for them to get paid, not they buying and selling things. Generally they're doing some work and they're being paid a fee for that. So you can partner up, two doctors, two lawyers, a doctor and lawyer, they can both partner up and they can do work. And this specifically, they'll decide the ratios beforehand, as we discussed earlier also. Just a quick recap, you decide the ratios for all partnerships prior to the partnership beginning or any transactions being done, or this won't be a permissible partnership. The profits will be shared, not the capital, and the profit ratio must be determined prior to the partnership beginning or at the time of the inception of the partnership. At the beginning, it must be written down. It doesn't have to be written down. It must be agreed upon what the share ratio will be. And remember also that if there is a loss, then the losses are borne proportional to the capital investment. But the profit can be stipulated according to the agreement by the partners. So if there is a loss, the capital will be according to how much of capital was invested. Each partner will take a loss based on that ratio of how much they invested each. But the profits can be determined by the partners upon an agreed amount. The agreement for losses can't be different to what the capital amount of each partner invested. It has to be that capital amount. So if somebody invested 90,000 and somebody else invested 10,000 and there is a loss, they made a loss of 100,000. 90,000 will be the loss of the partner that invested 90,000, and 10,000 will be the loss of the partner that invested 10,000. If there was a loss of 50%, they lost 50,000, then 45,000, which is 90% of the total amount, will be the loss of the partner that invested 90,000, and 5,000 will be the loss of the partner that invested 10,000. Profits will be shared according to the agreed upon ratio. Lastly, there is shirkatul wujuh. This is a partnership where, from the name, in Arabic, the word wajh means face. So wujuh means plural, many faces. So this is a shirkat where no capital investment comes from any partner. They go onto the market and they partner up. So basically, any profits that are coming, they agree upon how much they'll transfer, how much they'll share it. So example, 50-50 or 70-30. It doesn't matter in this partnership who does the work, or if one partner did more work or less work. Based on the agreement, they'll split the profit. This partnership is given its name because it's generally with people who don't have any capital, but they're known in society. So they're selling their faces. So that's what it essentially means. So based on your face, or people know you, they feel you're trustworthy, they'll give you money, they'll give you on credit, they'll trust you, and from there you'll build your business, you'll sell it cash and make your money quickly, or as slowly as you make your money. But you'll get your money from people, or you'll get commodities from people who trust you based on your face or your background, and you can have a partnership with this, coming into partnership with no capital and no specific work that you both are going to do. It is a permissible partnership, but it's not often seen in society. Some basic rules of shirkatul amwal. So all conditions of a valid contract must be present for shirkatul amwal, which means the time period, if there is one, must be known. When you'll enter into a partnership and you'll then start transacting with other people, then those transactions also have to fulfill all the criteria that we discussed before in the previous lesson with regards to valid transactions. Some other examples we didn't mention that that are common, and perhaps we need to mention them. That when doing business, you can't do business with a child. You can only do business with somebody who has an understanding. You can't do business with somebody who's insane. If somebody who is, if the father of the child gives permission, then you can do that business. Only the guardian of the being in question, if he gives permission, then you can do business. However, prior to that, you can't do business with a child, with somebody who's lost his mind, who's lost his marble, somebody who got drunk while he's intoxicated. You can't do business with him. If you did business, sometimes people, they'll try and take advantage of people, and the excuse is that why he got drunk, so it's fine for us to take his money. Actually, Islamically, if he got drunk, he had done something wrong, it was impermissible to do. But if we do take advantage of that, at that time he had lost his mind wasn't in his correct senses, the transaction will not be permissible. It will have to be returned. Even if he agrees upon it later, then it can be resolved that way. But at the time of the sale, if the partner was not in his senses, the entire transaction will be impermissible. It becomes a bay'ul fasid. It has to be returned. The item has to be returned, and the price has to be given back. So, like that, the other conditions that were mentioned, the price must be known, the time of delivery must be known. All those conditions have to be present in a partnership as well. Secondly, the distribution of the profits. It has to be known what percentage each partner is going to make at the beginning of the contract. If it's not done, then there is going to be a problem, and the whole partnership will be null and void. And then the profits that are made in this partnership will have to be given away in charity. So it's very important to make sure that we can allocate, even if again, just to reiterate, even if the capital contributions were equal or different, it doesn't matter. The distribution of profits can be completely different. In fact, even if one partner invests 60,000, the other partner invests 40,000, so there's a dominant partner with regards to capital, and they're doing the same amount of work. Still, because the partners agree, the one that invests more capital can take a less share if he wants to. He can take 30%, example, and the partner that is investing less can still take a higher share if both partners are in agreement. So the main thing is the rida, or the happiness from both partners, must be found, and then the distribution of the profits can be allotted. And upon the agreement, the distribution of profits has to be known at the agreed upon ratio. Secondly, the ratio of profits, as we saw, it must be exactly the same. Thirdly, the share of the loss will be again according to how much each partner invested. So at the end of the partnership, that's the time when we calculate profit minus loss. So if there were profits throughout the entire partnership and the same partnership continued, a new partnership wasn't drawn up, then at the end of the partnership, the drawings is not something that is recognized as a part of the partnership. Drawings in a partnership, if you take it, it will be equivalent to a loan being given to one of the partners, and at the end, you'll have to tally and work out the total profits minus the total losses, and that will tell you whether you made a profit or a loss, and that if there is a profit, it will have to be distributed, and then from that distribution, the drawings will be taken out for the specific partner that took the drawings, and that will decrease from his share that he is allotted to. However, again, if at the end of the partnership, the profit was shown to be less than the losses, that means effectively the partnership made a loss, then the partner that took the drawings will have to pay back the entire amount of his drawings, and then he'll take a loss from his capital. Or alternatively, if there was a profit that was made, but the profit that was made and distributed to the partner was less than his drawings amount, then he'll have to tally it and pay back the difference that he took extra as his drawings from the partnership. He'll have to pay it back. Obviously, this is not something like interest, so the second partner at the end, if he decides to forgive from his side, this is something that he can do. He's completely at his mercy to do this. Both partners can from their own side give extra, but they can't take without the permission of the other partner. So you can forgive a debt, and effectively if you take anything from the partnership, it will be considered to be equivalent to like a debt that you owe the partnership, and then distribution will happen at the end of the partnership. So very, very quick recap. Profits must be distributed according to the agreed upon terms at the time of the initiation of the contract. If no such proportion had been determined, the contract will be null and void. It will be a fasid contract, and the money will have to be returned to each partner respectively. The ratio of the profits are determined by actual profits and not by the capital investment of the partners. The ratio of profits can be distributed disproportionately to the capital investment of the partners. There is a misconception among people. They think that according to how much you invested, that's the ratio that you'll be getting from profit wise. Actually, you have to, Islamically, as far as we know, you have to stipulate the share. The ratio is not just going to be, it can be the same share as the capital investment, but it's not necessarily going to be that. It has to be stipulated and agreed upon by the partners at the time of the contract. One caveat, just beware that the share of a silent partner is somebody who invests money into the business, and he is categorically expressing that he is not going to be doing any work in that partnership from the beginning till the end of the partnership. So he expressly makes this a condition. If he doesn't do that, he wouldn't be considered a silent partner. Every partner has the ability to deal in the contract unless expressly stated. So if there's multiple silent partners or one silent partner, then it's just important to remember this point, that his share, the share of the silent partner, cannot be more, or his profit share ratio, how much he gets from the profit, example 20%, 30%, can't be more than his capital investment ratio. So if he invested 20%, the maximum profit that he can get is 20% of the profit. And this mustn't be confused with it being 20% of the capital. This still has nothing to do with his capital. His capital is not determining how much of profit is being made. It is being used to make profit, and that profit is being distributed 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever the percentage is. However, the ratio of the capital for the silent partner the ratio of the profit of the silent partner can't be more than his ratio of capital in that specific investment. So it must be equal to or less than his investment for the silent partner. Any other partner that's not a silent partner and is doing work in the contract, or even if he's not doing work but he is not expressly told that he's not allowed to do work, so therefore he becomes a silent partner. If any other partner can have a higher ratio than what they invested, but the silent partner cannot have a higher ratio of profit as to what he invested in his capital in respect to the other partner's capital investment. So sharing of the loss. Muslim jurists are unanimous on the point that a loss must be shared. Any loss that is made in the business, if the business didn't go according to plan and a loss was made, the loss of the investment must be shared in the same ratio as the capital investment. So So if one partner invested 90,000, one partner invested 10,000, the loss, we just discussed it earlier, the loss will be shared according to the capital investment. الربح على ما استلاح عليه والوضيعة على قدر المال. There's a famous Arabic proverb that basically means the profit of any agreement between two parties is shared according to the agreement of the parties. So the profit of any partnership is shared based on the agreement of the two parties, but a loss is always subject to the ratio of the investment. The loss is always, this is unanimous, all the scholars agree on this, a loss is always subject to the ratio of investment, and if one partner invested less, he won't get an equal loss to the other partner. He will get the loss according to what he invested. The nature of capital in a partnership. A partnership can only be formed with cash contributions from each party. Partners cannot contribute kind into a partnership. When starting a partnership, we have to start the partnership with a cash contribution. So you have to start initially in the earlier days, it was done with dirhams, dananir. Dirhams, darahim, dananir, these are silver coins, gold coins. So if you wanted to start a business venture with someone, you and him had to both put down a cash amount of either dirhams, dananir, or fulus nafiqah, whatever was considered to be cash at the time. So it wasn't such that you could come with, example you had a car, example you had a horse, example you had some commodity that you wanted to bring into the partnership. So at the beginning of the partnership, it had to be in cash. So the reasoning behind this is that the commodities of each partner with kind is always distinguishable to the other partner. So if somebody came with one horse and another person brought another horse, and they want to do a partnership where they're going to start selling these horses and then get money from there. When you bring your horse, your specific item, it's distinguishable from the other partner's item. So if your item gets sold and his item doesn't get sold, it has to be your item. It couldn't be his item that was sold. It's not an equal ownership of the specific item. So if one of the horses gets sold, you'll know whose horse was sold because the other partners is still there. So your item got sold. Because of the dispute that may come out when this happens, you brought a horse, I brought a horse, mine was sold, why must you get the profit? Somebody can ask this question, and this dispute may come between partners, especially if one has dead stock and is not selling, but the other partner brought stock which is now selling and is replenishing and is buying more stock and is selling it. At the end, when you look at what happened, it could be that all of the sales happened from one partner's stock and none of it happened from the other partners. Now this leads us to a problem which we discussed earlier of shirkatul milk. Now because when you bring in kind, it's distinguishable. You can tell which partner owns which one or which item was owned by which partner. That's why this issue comes about. This is why the ulama have said that you must come, when you're starting your partnership, come with cash and then you can buy something and sell it. Then definitely whatever was sold was owned by the partners and they would get their respective share. So because the item which is sold it's not undistinguished, you can distinguish who owned the item. Therefore, it would not be permissible to start the partnership according to the initial view with kind. It only would be done with cash. So the often redistribution of the share capital occurs between two partners, and this would okay, sorry, my mistake there. Okay, so a solution to this problem is if the item can be mass produced, where you can tell the difference between the two items. Sorry, you can't tell the difference between the two items. So example, people are making like canned goods or they're making spoons, or something is mass produced. It's not like sheep. It's not an item which if you brought one item, there would be no dispute from anyone if they brought a different item that looked exactly like it, like somebody's making desks. They all look the same. Chairs, they all look the same. So you can't really tell which one it is. Although when you're buying something, it's that specific item that even though it looks the same, you're talking about that specific item. But there's items the difference between them is so minute that in Shariat is overlooked if you had to mix them up. So like desks, those items that are mass produced where you can't tell the difference between them, they're called mithli items. So those items, if those items are brought as kind, then according to what Imam Abu Hanifa gave a solution, is if the two partners brought these items and mixed them up between them, so that the items are indistinguishable between the two partners. So I wouldn't know after it got mixed which one was my item and which one was his item. Then at the time of sale, we wouldn't know whose item it was, so it will be considered to be both of our items. This is how you mix the items up so that it's indistinguishable. Like milk and water, if you mix it up, you can't separate it. So in the same analogy, once you mix it up, you can't tell which one is whose, and your goal is to stay in partnership. So it will be equally owned by the two partners, and when they sell it, they'll share the profit from there. Secondly, a second solution, this might be a little bit more cumbersome, but the safer option is the partners will sell the commodities that they wish to contribute as capital, and after selling the item, they will contribute the cash into the partnership. Thereafter, they may buy the same commodities again if they need that specific commodity, or they may start the partnership with cash. But it's important to know the time at which the partnership begins, as the partnership is an agreement. It's like a contract which will only take place at a specific time with specific known criteria, like the profit share ratio, the amount each partner is investing, the time period. So it must occur on cash after the goods are sold. So then the capital contribution will be in cash. Thirdly, just one point to mention: the Maliki view in this mazhab, in specific endeavor, is that kind can be distributed into the partnership at the value of the commodities at the time of contribution. So the Maliki view on this is that kind can be produced, can be contributed as a partnership into the contract, and whatever the value of the item is on the market, the going rate for that item at the time of contribution will be that partner's contribution. So even if that item is then sold for a higher or lower value, because the partners agree on it, a higher or lower price, that excess will be part of the partnership. So when tallying is done at the end of the partnership, that partner's contribution of his capital will be the value of the commodity at the time of the contribution. Shariah-Compliant has given fatwa on this, on this view, Maliki view, because it's easier to do today in the world we're living in. So Shariah-Compliant has given fatwa on the Maliki view. Sometimes when people are on that caliber, on that level, they can look through the different mazahib and they can choose which one fits better today and which one they feel is more correct. So this is Shariah-Compliant's view. He said the Maliki mazhab over here seems to be more palatable, more correct. So he has given fatwa on that, and you can also make amal on his aqwal. But just to mention, the Asal Hanafi view is that the partnership will take place on cash. The Maliki view, which is what's given fatwa on today from Shariah-Compliant in Darul Fatawa, is that kind can be contributed into the partnership, and it will be taken at the value of the kind at the time of the partnership. So if it does shoot up in price or drop in price after the partnership began, that partner's capital contribution wouldn't be affected, because it is as if he sold it to the partnership and then he got his share from there at the price that it was when he contributed it. So the management of a shirkah. The next thing we'll go to is the management of a shirkah. This is that every partner has the right to manage the assets of the partnership and can transact on behalf of all the other partners. However, partners may agree on a condition that one or a few partners only will manage the business. This effectively means that the other partners that won't be managing the business will become silent partners in that business. So every partner, when you're making a partnership, unless expressly stated, every partner has the right to transact on behalf of the other partner. So if you enter into a car dealership, two partners get together, they're going to buy and sell cars, they put the terms of the contract down, they put the capital contribution, they made the profit share ratio, and the next day one of the partners is sick. The first partner or the remaining partner can buy on behalf of the partnership cars and sell cars without now permission being needed from the other partner at every single juncture. Both partners have equal rights to, or all the partners have equal rights to transact in the wealth of the partnership on behalf of all other partners. It's express condition, express permission that is granted unless otherwise stated. So if it is such that a silent partner is wanted, or they want to appoint a director of that business who will be the only one that will be given rights to transact on behalf of the other partners. Effectively what's happening is they're removing the rights from all the other partners, and they are effectively then becoming silent partners, and then only the director will remain with these rights of being able to transact on everybody else's behalf, and the other partners will no longer have this right to transact on behalf of the other partners in that business. So they'll become silent partners, and their share then must not exceed their capital investment ratio. The termination of a shirkah, of a partnership. When a partnership is ended or effectively terminated, every partner has the basically every partner has a right to end a partnership at any given point in time, as long as he gives notice to this effect to the other partners. So if there's 10 partners and one of them decides he wants to end this partnership, he just has to tell the other partners that he wants to end now and give them notice. In this day and age, sometimes it will be more difficult, where you'll have to give a little bit extra notice because people get into ventures, but that will end up costing them extra money. And if it is that in that case, the partner will have to either wait till the end of that specific venture so that it doesn't cost that much money, or he'll have to take that loss on his own head because he agreed to get into the partnership with them. So you can effectively end a partnership at any time, but you have to give notice to the partners, and as soon as you give notice to the partners, you may end the contract. Any one of the partners may end that contract. When a partnership is being ended, then the partnership will have to divide its assets between the partners. So if the partnership has cash or liquid assets, then it will be divided pro rata. That means the profits will be distributed according to the ratio that was agreed upon, and thereafter all the capital investment that's remaining will be divided according to how much each partner contributed. If the assets are illiquid, this means they are tied up in commodities which were supposed to be sold at a later stage, but they were not sold as yet at the end of the partnership, what can be done? So there's three possibilities, two here. If all partners agree to sell the assets and generate cash, they may do so. Thereafter they can split the cash pro rata, so they can sell all the commodities. If all the partners agree to sell all the commodities that are in the business and linked, then they can do so, and they can after this split the cash. So in this case, the partner that wants out now will have to give the other partners time to at least sell the assets. If all in agreement, then they have to give them time to sell the assets before they pull out of the partnership and get the cash. So whatever is done in the meantime will be still part of the partnership. So you have to give them enough time to at least sell off whatever assets were purchased for resale, and were not sold as yet. If all the partners agree to keep the assets and distribute them, then also they can do this, and they can distribute the assets among themselves pro rata. Again, same, the profit will be distributed according to the agreed upon ratio, and the capital will be distributed according to how much they invested initially. And at the time of the termination of the contract, the going rate or the market rate of these assets will be given a value, and that's the amount that each of them will be representing. So the capital amount plus the profit share of each partner will be calculated from the total value, and they'll take proportionately the items according to their value. So it doesn't have to be sold if all partners agree that they want to keep the commodities and distribute it among themselves. Remember, the capital is divided according to the investment ratio, and the profit is divided according to the agreed upon ratio, which may differ. Disputes with regards to illiquid assets. If one of the partner wants to sell an asset or sell all the assets, and the other partners want to distribute the same assets among the partners, then what will happen? The partner that wants to distribute the assets will be preferred, as he partly owns the assets and cannot be forced to sell. So if a partner wants to sell and the other partner doesn't want to sell, then the one that will be preferred is the one who does not want to sell. So he wouldn't be forced to sell his asset. However, if the assets can be separated, then the partners who want to keep the assets will get their share, and the other partners may sell the separated assets. So if an asset is a block of flats or a few buildings or something that can be separated. So if it's a car, you wouldn't be able to separate it, but if it's like a fleet of cars, then you can separate it. If it's you bought butter, you bought something that can't be separated. If it is a massive amount of like a 5 kilo tub of something, it can be separated into 2.5 kilos. Obviously, depending on whether it's still new, whether it's old, it has to be seen, the item at the time of termination of the contract. Can it be separated or not? If it can, then you'll separate it, and the partner that wants to sell, he'll sell. The partner that wants to keep his share, he'll keep his share. If the item cannot be separated, like a building which has one bathroom, one bedroom, it can't be separated because every room in the house has a different value. It will be too difficult, and it will cost too much to separate it and make equal living quarters for each partner, for each share. The value of the building, the value of the item will decrease if you had to separate it. Therefore, you cannot separate it. Then the partner that wants to keep it will first be offered to purchase his share, or the partner that wants to end the contract and take his share in cash. The partner that wants to keep the asset will be offered to purchase the other partner's share first, and if he cannot afford it or he doesn't want to purchase it, then that partner will have the right to sell off his portion to a third party. But again, the right of purchasing will go first to the current partner, and then if he rejects that, then your part of that item may be sold to a third party, and he would become the new partner of the remaining partners. So if I had a house and my brother owned half of that house and he wanted to sell, first he would have to offer me, and if I don't take part of that house, I don't example, a value of 200,000, we both owned it 50-50, he would offer me his share for 100,000, and if I didn't want it or I didn't have the money at the time, then he can sell it to somebody else. That's his share of that partnership, and then that person, the new person, would then own half of the house with me. So if a partner passes away, the termination happens immediately. All the heirs of the deceased will inherit the shares of that partnership immediately. So there's 9 partners, one passed away, all of his heirs, there's 10 partners, 9 were left, one passed away. Now all of the heirs will inherit immediately that one person's share. If example is 10, if it's 10%, they'll all inherit that 10% according to the ratio that is stipulated for them from the Quran. So they'll all immediately own this person's shares in that business. The heirs can then decide if they want to sell their share or they want to join the current partnership and form a new partnership and a new agreement with all of them, their shares being unaffected. So they would own the items, and because they own the items with the other partners, they don't have to come with any cash contribution. It is undistinguishable. They can immediately go into partnership, a new partnership with the current old partners of their deceased father or mother or whoever it was in the case. Or they can decide to sell their share and the old partnership will immediately terminate. If a partner independently wishes to end a partnership, then what occurs? This means that he only wishes to end and the other partners want to remain in partnership. What can happen in this case? So the other partners may purchase his share and continue with the same partnership. So one person wants out, the others don't want to end the partnership. They can, either one person or all of them together, decide to buy his share out and give him his cash contribution and he'll leave the business. Alternatively, if the assets are separatable, then he may sell his share after giving notice to the other partners without ending their partnership, so they can remain in business together, or he can take his assets from the business and leave, and the other partners can remain with the same partnership. It doesn't have to be a new partnership if all the other partners agree. So this is the second type of partnership which is often done, which is called a mudaraba. Now very quickly, we're almost finished. A mudaraba is a contract of partnership where one partner contributes capital and the other partner does all the work. So one partner is giving all the capital, the other is doing all the work. This isn't to be confused with a silent partner. It sort of resembles what a silent partner would be doing. However, in this case, one partner, that is the specific thing of this is that one partner doesn't put any capital down. So from the perspective of the partner that's contributing, he would be contributing all the capital and he wouldn't be doing any of the work. That's one specific part. However, the other partner would also specifically not be putting any capital down. If you put capital down, it will be a normal musharaka like the other contract that was mentioned before, and the partner that doesn't want to do any work, he can be a silent partner. But in this specific case, one is contributing capital, the other one is not contributing capital at all, and his contribution is made in his work. So the other one does all the work. In this contract, the profits are split according to the agreed upon ratio, just like it was before, and the investment capital has to be in cash. So you cannot bring a commodity and give it to somebody and say, let's do a mudaraba where you don't put any cash down and I'll bring everything. What again can happen there is you could sell it immediately as a representative for him, and once the cash is there, then you can start the partnership, and from that point on the partnership will begin. So there's three fundamental levels to a mudaraba and what a person can do within a mudaraba. So if the investor gives a general permission to the working partner, then the working partner can transact on his own wealth without any restriction. In his wealth without any restriction. This means that, if example, I give somebody 100,000 rand, tell him go out in the business world and make money, however you see fit, then I can go buy shoes, I can go buy cars, I can go buy clothes, I can go buy phones, I can go to a different city, I can do anything that I feel permissible. Obviously, I can't do something that's impermissible for myself or for the investor. One example that comes is something that used to occur in the past. It doesn't occur that much today. We don't see it as much. But there's an example of the example that comes there is of slavery, where the partner that's transacting, he buys a slave who happened to be the investor's father or the investor's son. Now what happens when you own Islamically? If you had to own your relative, your father or your son, immediately that person would be free. So in this case, this person gave the money to the investor. The investor gave the money to the mudarib, the one that will do the work, and he bought someone that will be free immediately upon the investor owning this person. So what would happen? This person would immediately be free, and therefore there would be no profit from the investor's perspective. That's not why he gave him money. So he obviously knowing why he gave him the money, he wouldn't be permitted to do this. If he did this, he would be liable for the cost of that of the purchase, and because he had done something that he wasn't supposed to do. So there are a few things that you can't do. A lot of them, just like how you can't purchase wine, you can't purchase wine. So you get into a mudaraba with somebody who's not a Muslim, he can't purchase wine and swine also, because the investor can't purchase wine and swine. Remember, in a mudaraba, a partnership, the investor owns the item. Then it is sold and the profits are realized. So it's a little bit different to how the bank does it, where they're getting their interest without any risk. Here in Islamic contracts, there's always going to be a risk which will have to be taken, even if that risk is mitigated to such a small time period or such a small amount of risk. But the risk is the thing that gives us a reward. We, as Muslims, don't do any interest transactions, and we have to have a risk for us to be able to get a reward. So the ownership comes into the investor's. Basically, the item comes into the investor's ownership, and then it is sold, and the profits are distributed. Secondly, if the second type, if a general permission is given to the partner to do whatever he wants, basically, he still is restricted, and he wouldn't be able to give anybody a loan for the purpose of making profit, as that's going to be interest. But he also wouldn't be permitted to give anybody a loan which is interest free, because the reason he gave him money was for him to make profit, and giving people loans interest free is not generating profit. So he wouldn't be permitted to give a person a loan. The second level is if the investor gives permission expressly for the you can call him the transactor or the mudarib, the invested in party, to give people loans. If he expressly gives him permission to give people loans, or tells him do as you wish, and allows him to do whatever he feels fit with that money, then he can give a person a loan, even though he wouldn't be getting any profit from there. There the investment will be a reward in the akhirah. There's a massive reward that's given, that's promised in a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for giving people loans. Is something that is encouraged. However, without express permission, the reason he gave money, the investor, is to make a profit. The loan wouldn't be resulting in a profit. If he expressly gives him permission, then he has a greater level of permission, and then he can give the loan without it being specifically mentioned, or him being told do whatever you want to do with this money. Then he will not be allowed to give a loan. If he does give a person a loan, he'll be liable for anything that happens, and if the person runs away or the money is lost, he would have to pay back that amount to the investor. However, if he gave him permission to do so, then if anything happens, he wouldn't be liable for it, because he had the permission to do so. Thirdly, this is the other way now, where an investor restricts the working partner. So for example, he tells him you can only work in this city, or you can only do this type of work. So if he tells him you can only invest in cars, you can only invest in livestock, or you can only invest in Durban, and you can't go to Cape Town. Alternatively, you have to go to Cape Town, you can't do this work in Durban, I'm doing it here. That is something that the investor in this specific type of contract can do, and the working party will be bound by those restrictions. So very quickly, some rules of the mudaraba, and then we'll wrap up for tonight. A time period for a mudaraba may be set, which means you can say this contract will last for 1 month, it will last for 1 year, it will last for 10 years. And at the end of the time which is stipulated, automatically, without notice, because notice was already given, the contract would terminate. This means that immediately no more transacting would be permitted on the investor's money, and the profits will have to be distributed, and the capital will have to be returned. The calculations of the profit will only take place at the end of the contract, as total expenses or losses will only be, total expenses or losses will be removed from the profit prior to distribution. So at the end of the contract only will profits be realized, as they could result or they could be diminished with future losses that may come about prior to the end of the contract. So only at the end of the contract will you tally profits versus losses, and then distributions will take place. So the profit will only be fully earned by the transacting party at the end of the contract. Same with the investor, but nothing would be binding until the end of the contract. In the case of a loss, the investor will be fully liable and the working partner will make zero profit. So he did take a risk, he did all that time, all that effort he made, and he made zero profit because it ended up being a loss. This endeavor, example, somebody invested 100,000 and they made a loss of 10,000. Then because the one party didn't invest anything, he would walk away with zero, and the full loss will go on to the investor in this specific case. So a few extra rules. A contract will not be valid if a person is forced into the contract. Now this applies with regards to all the contracts. Every contract we do, every transaction we do, if a person is forced into the sale, for example, a drug dealer puts a gun to somebody's head and says, buy this thing from me, that would result in that sale being null and void, and it will have to be returned. The sale will, although it will go through, it will have to be returned, and it will be an impermissible type of transaction. So in this case also, if a person is forced, he will not be, the contract will not be valid. A working partner can have another mudarabah with a third party. However, that contract will only be binding once profit is made. So, example, somebody gives me 100,000 rand to transact and says 50-50 split between us. I can then get into another contract with a third person and tell him that you take this money and we'll split it. 60% I take, 40% you take. And do a second mudarabah with him. Then he'll get his 40%, I'll take my 10%, and the initial party or the initial contributor of capital, he'll get his 50%. So this is basically one way if you could arrange this. This is basically you would do no investment and no expertise or work done from your side. You'll be getting a profit coming from there. However, the ratios here, it needs to be done very well, because the ratios will be split according to the agreement, and it will be stipulated according to the percentage of profit on total sales, or it could be on the profit on the percentage of what that working partner makes. So if a person gives me 100,000 rand and says whatever you make, we split 50-50, then whatever I make, it will be split 50-50. So if I invested with somebody else that same money and the split was 50-50 for me and him as well, then I would be getting 50% of the sales, and from my share, because he said whatever I make 50-50 between me and him, then it will be distributed accordingly. So I'll get 50% of the 50%, 25%, and the initial investor will get 25%. So in this example, the investor told me 50-50 split for whatever I make, and then I gave the money to somebody else to make money. So when he came back with his profit, let's say he made 100% profit, he'd take his 50, I'll take this 50 and split it 50-50 between me and the original partner. So I'll get 25 and he'll get 25. Now, it also can be split not based on whatever I make, but whatever was made on this money. So it's very important to know how you're splitting it at the beginning of the contract, because if it was done like that and he said 50-50 for whatever is made on this money, that would mean that if I split it then with a third party to 50-50 and he made 50% and then he came and gave me 50%, then the investor's portion will be 50% of whatever was made. That means 50% of the total sales. So that 50% that I got, that entire amount will go to the investor. So in that case, I would get nothing. And that's why it's very important to know what the percentage of profit is based on, either my share or the total share. So it could be a less amount, it could be 20% of the total share, it could be 10% of the total share. But one very important thing, this also comes in the kitabs, as an example where you would actually make a loss. So if the investor said it's split 2/3, so he'll take 60%, 67% or 2/3, and I'll get 1/3. And then I subsequently, again this is of total sales, not my share but total sales. If it's on my share, then I won't be able to make a loss. But if it's on total sales, which is permissible to do, then he would get his 67%. And if I got into a partnership with a third person and I said 50-50 split between me and him, and I didn't realize what I was doing quickly, that person went and made a profit, 100,000 rand profit he made, or let's say he made 1 million rand profit. 50% he would get, so he'd get his half a million rand. And then 2/3 I would have to give to the investor, which means he'll get the other 500,000, and me from my own pocket I'll have to take another 167,000 and give it to him. Because more than 100% was what I'm liable for. So this is something that can happen if you don't word it correctly, and it will be binding. So if it's done, obviously the better thing for you, the safer thing is to distribute it with the first partner according to whatever I make, not according to whatever the total sales is. But having it on total sales also is permissible, and if he does insist on that or no contract, then it is a permissible option. Lastly, very quickly, if the investor leaves the fold of Islam or passes away, the contract will immediately be terminated. However, if the working partner has to die, the contract will also be terminated immediately. But if he leaves the fold of Islam, if he's not a Muslim, the one that's being invested with, the contract won't end immediately. So if the investor has to leave the fold of Islam or has passed away, the contract would terminate immediately. But if the working partner has to die, then also it will terminate immediately. But if he leaves the fold of Islam, or if he's not a Muslim, then the contract will not terminate because that has happened. So if anybody does have a situation where that does happen, then if it's an investor that it happened to and he left the fold of Islam, the contract, obviously there's more severe laws with regards to that. The person left the fold of Islam, is not a Muslim anymore, it's far worse. However, as far as this contract is concerned, this contract will be terminated if he does that, if he's the investor. However, if he's the working partner, it won't terminate just on that happening. The distribution of profit, it is necessary for like with every other contract, for the validity of the contract, that the agreement of percentage share of the profits will be determined, and specifically it cannot be a lump sum. So it can't be that I'm investing 100,000 rand and I want 10,000 rand from it. So that's my share. If that happens, it's not going to be a permissible contract. It must be a percentage, and also it mustn't be a percentage of the capital. So if I invested 100,000 rand, I can't say I want 10% of the capital. Effectively, this is 10,000 rand. What we have to have is a percentage of profits. Secondly, it is allowed to have a different profit share ratio for different commodities. So I can tell somebody with this 100,000 rand, if you buy and sell cheese, you'll get 20% of the profit, and if you buy and sell the milk, you'll get 50% of the profit. So if he buys cheese for that transaction, he'll get 20%. If he buys milk for that transaction, he'll get 50%. It'll be a little bit more difficult to calculate, but it is permissible to do, and if you do it, you'll have to calculate it accordingly, and he will get the agreed upon ratio for the agreed upon commodity that is being sold. It is also permissible to have a different profit share ratio depending on location. So you can tell somebody, if you're doing business in Durban, you'll get 10%. If you go to Joburg, you'll get 50%. Or if you go to a different country, you'll get a different percent. So based on what he does, he'll get his percentage accordingly. And you can have it different percentages in different places, also across different commodities. It is, however, not permissible for the working partner to claim a periodic salary or remuneration for the work done by him. So if you're working, you can't take a salary as distributions are only realized at the end of the contract, the entire period, which can happen at any point in time, technically. Both partners can end the partnership when they both feel like. However, they can't take a salary. If a salary wants to be taken, the other partner can agree to it. He can't. However, the one partner can't force insist that he wants a salary. The other partner can give a salary from his side. Also, he can take it as a loan and tally it at the end of the partnership, as we discussed earlier. One exception: if the business is outside the home, then the working partner can claim for his personal expenses, accommodation, food, etc. However, he is not entitled to this if he is in his own home city. So, just to end up, termination of a mudaraba. If the partnership makes a profit, then a loss, the loss will offset the profit before distribution. If the loss is greater than the end of the mudaraba, the investor is solely liable for the losses, and the working partner will effectively make no profit. Either partner can end the contract at any point in time on condition that they give notice to the other party. And according to the Hanafi and Hanbali view, a maximum period can be set at which point the contract will end without notice. However, there's nothing really mentioned, doesn't seem to be mentioned anything about a minimum period that is set for the contract. But if the two partners do agree upon something, it looks like it will have to be adhered to, that specific minimum period. However, there isn't anything mentioned in the books of fiqh with regards to a minimum period. So any partner can end at any point in time. But a condition made by a partner should be upheld. Okay, so next week, inshallah, we'll try and do riba and a few other things about partnership. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.